Okay, so let's start our last webinar together. I hope you're ready to go a little bit deeper into the topic of continuous development. As you know, we're starting with the check-in, so head over to menti.com and use the code 647986. And today we thought we'd check in with a few words. What do you and your team do to continue develop together? And hello to you, Hazel. Welcome back. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm in London and it's sunny, so that's a good thing.
That's very lovely. As you can see, we are not having the same situation in Stockholm where it's still snowing. Good. So would you like to start checking in maybe? Hazel?
Yes.
What do your team, what do you do to continue develop?
Should I do it on Menti or here?
No, do it here while we're waiting for the mentees to show up.
All right, perfect. So for what I would jump to is to say feedback. I think it's something that we practice a lot. And you and I were speaking about that last time when we spoke, actually.
We were.
The importance of constant feedback. So something that is part of the system of the team, right? Something that not only is rewarded by promoted as well, and then something we seek, not only that we want to give to people. So yeah, definitely it would be feedback.
Good. We have some other check-ins popping up here as we speak. Supporting, reflecting, and trying to challenge our process. Good. Is there anything more? Is there any one particular that pops out to you, Hazel?
Oh, feedback is there too. Give and receive feedback.
People are big on feedback.
I'm curious about do we do anything? If so, it's not structure, but a lot of individual items and trail and errors. I'm just curious about that one.
Let's make sure that we get back to that one for the Q&A or later when we go back to the check-ins.
Perfect.
Before that, let's just go over the basics of the webinar. Most of you have been here before, so you know the expectations on having your camera on and your microphone on so that we can have a good workshop together. And write the questions in the chat window as we go along. The format of today is we'll do a quick recap of the tools that we've been going through in the Learning Kit and also with you, Hazel, in the recording. We'll do a workshop to go a little bit deeper into the topic and then some reminders and wrapping up the whole course, actually. So what we talked about this week, I know. What we talked about this week was continuous team development. And what we speak about when we talk about the continuous development is that it's so great to explore and to be creative and to really try to find new ways of working. But it's also important that we sort of find the things that actually work and that we commit to those new habits and the principles that works for us as a team to be able to become better. And some of the things that we saw in the Learning Kit was the Kaizen, Japanese, both a working process, but also almost a mindset of improvement, which is what it means. And when we talk about it in this setting, it's about continuous improvement. And it's just one of those things that we really should keep with us at all times, that there's always an opportunity to improve and that everything is up for grabs and that we can always look at things and the small things that we can improve to become better. We also looked at the Lewin's model about unfreezing and changing and then refreezing again in a new body. And here we see it as water, but of course it can be a new body of a team or of an organization. We also looked at holacracy and what is it that makes holacratic organizations, and to look a little bit at those models and ways of working that are quite different from a traditional organization. Would you like to go through the habits, Hazel?
Yes. For those of you who saw the video, something that and also as it relates to feedback, right? To my check-in, has to do with building habits, and then making sure that when you're bringing something in that you want to develop as something that you want to become a behavior, always focusing on the idea that habits can only be replaced, right? We only have 10 hours in the day. Some of us more, because I need very little sleep, so I get about 12 hours of in the day. But yeah, just knowing that we should always think into replacing behaviors with or habits with new ones. Setting your intention around what it is at minimum viable effort. So not necessarily saying if you want to accomplish something huge, setting your bar super high, because at the end of the day, it's just, competing with something else. So something simple. What is the 5-minute or the 2-minute version of that goal? What does it look like? For example, and then I love this idea that habits are something that are contagious. Keep in mind that it's both the negative and the good habits. So also keeping an eye on the fact that sometimes the things that we are doing that we perhaps are not super aware of can be something that people are picking up on that are either negative or positive. And I think one thing to also note here is that the more you do something new and the more you can make those new habits, visible, the more people are going to want to also, have a little bit of whatever it is that you're doing or drinking, right? Like, what is this person up to? I also want whatever they are having. And then making a plan around it, being realistic. 21 days is what scientists say that it takes a habit to become a behavior. And then being aware of the immunity change. On the deck that I shared and on the video that Johanna and I recorded, which I hope you've seen, there is a link to a really interesting exercise that you can do with your teams, that you can do with groups that you're starting, new projects on. That is your immunity to change. It's almost like an allergy, right? Something that kind of spikes up whenever you're bringing something new, whenever you're replacing all their habits. And what it does is that it kind of triggers this idea of just moving away from the new habit that we're trying to build, because it's just too much work, right? Whenever you're doing something new like that. So being aware of it is super, super useful, because then you can identify when it actually pops up. And as I mentioned with your teams, it's something that is very, very valuable. So if, for example, you were trying to, include feedback as a new habit, perhaps meetings would get in the way, or time, or something. There will always be something that will try to stop that new habit, because building a new habit means you're out of your comfort zone and of your autopilot, as I like to call it. So just being aware of it is super, super useful.
Great, thank you. We also looked at teal and teal organizations, and these 6 areas to focus on, and some guidelines within each of those areas. And finally, we also looked at teams as a team's operating system. So looking a little bit at what operating system are your team, and how do you make sure that you approve, like fix bugs and add new features and stuff like that. So that's a really quick walkthrough of what was in the learning kit and in the recording. And I thought we'd go quickly back to the Mentimeter now, when we have a lot of check-ins, to see if there's anything that stands out for you now. And for all of you, also have a look, and if there's something that you want to highlight in the Q&A. And also, like you say, welcome to the youngest member of this course ever, which I think is too.
Yes, yes, thank you. You can't just have the little head. I mean,
it's never too.
I have 5 kids, so so cute. Thank you, Peter. In my teams, can you scroll down just in my teams? the keyword is the open culture. Everyone feels safe. Yeah, and how do we build that culture, right? I think is the interesting part, because how do you build a safe and open culture? What are the habits that come with that? Like, what behaviors do we need to instill? That's what I'm curious about. I don't know if whoever shared that could just elaborate a little more.
Whoever wrote that, let's come back to you when we have the Q&A.
Okay, perfect.
And for all of, like I said, the rest of you is looking at the check-ins, make sure that you write the questions in the chat channel. So we will go into the workshop and explore a little bit and try to keep those check-ins fresh in mind and see if we can build on them. So when we picked the workshop for this week, we picked one that many of you have tried and we've seen on in Slack, that a lot of you like it. So it's the start, stop, continue, which is something that we usually use for feedback. And today we'll use it as feedback for ourselves. So what we're going to do is that in your groups, we would like you to spend 3 minutes to think around maybe your own leadership and about how you're working in your teams together. So, and again, when we're speaking about leadership, for those of you who are not in an official leader role, to think about your everyday leadership, even if it's not an official leader. As we've talked about, we're all unofficial leaders as well and leading in different ways and in different directions. And then I'm going to give you a minute here before we break into groups to write down one thing that you would like to start doing, one thing that you would like to stop doing, and one thing that you would like to continue doing. And then when you come into your groups, take your time to share these with the other ones, and also to consider what is the smallest thing, one small thing that you can do to make sure that you start working for those things, focusing on what to start and what to stop maybe. So the smallest thing that you can do to achieve the things you want to start and stop with. And I will post these instructions in Slack so that you can go back to them. But let's take a minute in 1 or 2 minutes in silence, and you can start writing down your start, stops, and continues. People look like you're thinking hard. That's a good sign. So many things to start and stop with. Okay, I will send out the links now for your breakout rooms, and we'll have 20 minutes instructions on Slack, and we'll see you back here soon. I'm just going to move one person. There we go. Okay, I think that's everyone. So welcome back. I hope that you had some really good conversations, and we're going to continue into the Q&A part of this. And as always, you can both share if you have questions, but if you want to share maybe something that you talked about in your groups, you're welcome to do that as well. And the chat channel is open, or you can do the big wave if you have a question. So is there anyone who wants to share or want to start with a question? Otherwise, we can highlight something from the check-in? No initial question. Okay, so Hazel, do you...
I would love to hear reflections, actually.
Yeah, but then let's start there.
I'm very, very patient. I have 5 children, so I can wait for you guys to be ready to pop.
So anyone who wants to share a reflection from your talk? Moritz.
Well then, yeah, just like maybe one thing that we were talking about quite a lot, like talking about continuous team development. What we were just wondering about were mainly 2 aspects. One was like we learned so many things over the last weeks, so many tools, so much input, so many ideas, and like bringing all that together into the daily work seems to be like the biggest challenge. So we were just discussing if it needs some kind of, well, we have a lot of toolboxes, like the Hyper Island toolbox with all the workshop tools, but what is missing somehow, or what from our discussion was one thing that leads to success, is kind of a toolbox, or like a clearly defined set of methods. And that was just something that we're talking about, and I would be really curious to hear your input on that, if there is something, or if that leads to success, or what actually makes success in that context.
Does anybody have a thought on that?
Wait to pass it forward, Hazel.
No, I'm curious. I'm also curious.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we're living in an era where success has been redefined, right? Or is being redefined, I would say. And so when you use that word, it takes me to a path that is known, and really right now, with everything that is changing every day, what we are living and what you guys will live with your teams is in constant state of ambiguity, right? So how can you, I think the toolbox, or the method that I would focus on, is on really working through those habits and those behaviors that are going to help you and your teams deal with ambiguity. So those are the ones that I would focus on, and that has to do with tools that can help you with vulnerability, openness. There was a check-in on our team is open and safe. And then maybe if you want to make it more of a framework, right, which is I think what you guys are looking for, could you then do a month or 21 days on safety, and then the next 21 days on being open or vulnerability, like something like that, I think could be more of a framework. But I can't really say that there's like one method or one toolbox that would that would help anyone right now. I heard someone. Oh yeah.
It's just like me adding something on that, because like I had a feeling in my last job that it came to success retro perspective. So after like thinking a lot about all the tools, all the input, it like started working in chaos. But it came to success when thinking back and seeing, okay, we defined like the work packages, and like for working as a team, we defined these values or this vision or this mission. But that came in, it became more clear when coming back than it was actually while doing it.
Yeah, it's the learning by doing, right? Yeah. Joan, you had something to share? Do you want to share it to the group?
Sure, yeah. I was just commenting on, I find it quite an interesting challenge, because you can work with a team to, execute these workshops and create all these toolboxes and playbooks and manifestos and what have you. And even if they're kind of along for that process, it's still up to them to then be able to take that and, run with it and use it in their project teams or whatever they're doing. And I find that to be the challenge that I'm at the moment with my team, because, even if they're along for the journey, some people maybe don't want to change, or they don't, they don't always think back to what they've been doing. So I'm trying to think about, in similar question that you guys phrased in the workshop for us, or what's like the smallest thing you can start to do now, or, the feedback challenge we had a few weeks ago. I think you shared, Johanna, about like, challenging someone to give 10 points of feedback in a single day, maybe applying like a method like that, try to really challenge people to take ownership themselves and really leverage all the learnings that hopefully they would have taken from something like this, or sharing these learnings with them.
Yeah, and I think what you remind me of is that we can have those KPIs, so the big goals of becoming I don't know, a closer team, right? But it's the daily indicators that we really need to focus on. So it's not the key performance indicators, but it's the daily manifestations, right? So if you want to learn to speak Swedish, and you use Duolingo, those 5 minutes a day are your indicators that you're on track to raise that. And then, focusing on celebrating that rather than, we're not fluent in Swedish yet, which is, ultimately what we want to accomplish. But it's just those daily, the 5. In our group with Matthias and Sammy, we were speaking about what is that, the smallest thing that we can do. And we really, the 3 of us boil down to taking 3 minutes to write before doing, because the 3 of us are, we rush and we're doers. So maybe just 3 minutes to pause, write. Do we need to do, or do we need to think? For example, right? So that would be something that we would take away. Any other reflections?
I could add to that what you were talking about, Joanne, also that it's so difficult to create or to change habits in that way. And I can really recognize also the team setting up these fancy guidelines, and this is how we're going to live, and yes, I'm going to be open-minded from now on, and then 2 seconds later you're everything but open-minded. So I'm also thinking that it's something about giving each other some gentle reminders of what does it mean, and just as you say as well, Hazel, down to what is the actual behaviors that comes from being open-minded, or what does it look like being open-minded when I'm going to give feedback on something, for an example. So there's a lot of patience needed, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are there any questions from anyone?
Yeah. Hi, do you listen to me, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is just like a reflection, and I was thinking of, well, there are many people from Europe, and well, I'm from Guatemala, and I just noticed how different like our cultures are, because I hear all of this Scrum and like lean thinking kind of way, and like everybody has these works where the groups are like the most common way of working, and in Guatemala we're still on that process of changing. So everybody, like in my generation, I'm 19 years old, so like 90s 2000 generation are still thinking in my country of like the boss and then like the workers kind of system. And it's just that thing of like involving people in the work, like making teams place where everybody is the leader, and not, and I have that thought, like I want to be the boss, like 6 weeks ago, and right now it's more like, oh my god, how can I help others become a leader in whatever they do, like you can be the leader anywhere, not the boss, not the worker, but the leader in any situation. So yeah, that's just a great reflection.
I just love that. I love the idea that boss doesn't mean leader, and leader doesn't mean manager, for sure, right? So which area do we want to put our effort and our intention towards, right?
That's my favorite thing when we're going to a new company and working with them. When you're in a meeting and the boss says something, and then you look at everyone else in the room, who are they looking at right after the boss has said something? That's sort of that's the person who's the leader in the room, when they're looking like, how's that person reacting to what it said? Because that's where I take my cue from. So
You don't need a title to be a leader, Johanna also.
No.
You're being quoted now, my friend.
Oh, look at that. That's the first time I've been quoted. This is a big day for me. Yeah. Any more reflections or thoughts? Oh, quiet. Last webinar, people. Come on. This is the last
Oh, Gabriel, come on. Gabriel Gala.
Hi.
Yay.
Oh, now we.
I'll let Gala go
No,
first.
you go, Gabriel.
No, go.
We're only gonna say the same thing. I just wanted to check. Gabriel and I were talking about remote working. I'm working remotely now, and Gabriel works with remote teams as well. And we were talking about setting culture in a remote team, whether that happens on Slack or how does that happen, which sometimes is a little bit difficult when you have a team that is in the office and those relationships happen, and then the Slack or that communication that happens on Slack feels very sort of about efficiency and directness, and that we're not building those more meaningful connections perhaps. And we were wondering what are the things that we could do, or what are the things that you do to make more of a sort of community environment within Slack or with remote teams in general.
Yeah, so I love that you're bringing this up, and I'm like so anxious to share with you, because I have been living nomadically for the last 22 months, and so I do work remotely every single day. But one thing that we have achieved with my team, my core team, some are in Amsterdam, some are in Stockholm, is using Slack every single morning for check-ins. And these are check-ins about how we feel, not about work or efficiency, right? So one thing that we identified, and we actually had a workshop around this, like how can we do this? Because a lot of us are working remotely. And what we realized we were missing in the system was that water cooler talk, or the getting into the bathroom at the same time talk.
Yeah.
That yes, you can send a WhatsApp to someone, but it tends to be more like, hey, can you give me feedback on this? Or, hey, what do you think about this? Can we have a meeting? So the water cooler thing. And then we share how are we feeling and what would we like to accomplish today every morning on Slack. And I know it sounds like something very simple and small, but it's I look forward to it. It's the first thing I open. It's replaced opening Facebook now, which is good.
For the week.
I go to that, right? I go to the morning of, my team, and it's like 9 of us. So we're all checking in, and some people have struggle with the kid at home or work or feeling sad or feeling excited. And so I think that's something that could be very useful.
Has that replaced your stand-up, or do you have such a thing, or is that your only sort of?
No, we still have those. So we have virtual scrums, stand-ups, and then we also have a weekly, like an hour and a half long check-ins, like more project-based.
Right. Okay. And do you do any checkouts as well?
Some people do. Some people check in the middle, and like midday check-in. I've been crazy the morning, but here's my check. So yeah, it's as long as we do it in the day, I think that's like the unwritten rule behind it.
That's great.
It's also about having having the forum. So what we have in our team in Slack is also a channel that is just for water cooler talk. It's just so that you can post something funny, or there needs to be a place to do those things. Otherwise you're going to get a little bit lost in it. But then I think also you're the pro at this, Hazel, because I think you're also putting questions out for our network and collaborators every week, like what happened this week and anything you want to share. And which also gives such a great feeling of belonging, even to the persons that you're not working every day with or might check in with every day. So throwing out questions.
That's another good one. Yeah, I throw out questions every Monday on learnings from workshops and online sessions that we've done, so that everybody can learn from those, because not everybody's working together, right? So maybe Johanna and I are working on this together, but then there's another team doing something else. So I ask questions every Monday I rephrase the questions. They're all about learnings. So what did you feel like you failed, or what's the biggest insights, things like that, also to provoking space to think, which is something that Matthias, Sami, and I were speaking about, that we don't have very often in any workplace, really.
Mm. I also want to highlight what Moritz said here, because I think you can really see a culture being built within the Slack team that you're all in. There was a lot of you who didn't know each other for 6 weeks ago, and now are making jokes that only we in this group understand and stuff like that. So would you like to say something about that, Moritz? Like the triggers and what do you think are the triggers except for the tools? No, wait, we can't hear you.
It's not me talking again.
Come on, Moritz.
Yeah, actually, I think I was just writing when I was listening. So I think it's already answered. But I think on the one hand, it's the tools, but also it's, and I think that's what we have learned a lot about, is how you use the tools. So like very few of the tools that we had are completely new to most of us. But I think like just the input with the check-ins, check-outs, stuff like that, I think that's independently from where you are. And also having like this huge groups where you like collaborate and like have this content discussions, but also the small learning group, they help a lot to like build identities. And don't know, maybe it's the little things, maybe it's the frog and the cat that makes the difference somehow, that you engage and start talking about the cat images, or send cat gifs, or cats eating frogs or stuff like that. Maybe that's what already helps, probably.
The cat eating frog.
You can see some people in the frog groups being like, they did what now?
Yeah, that's all I have to say, I think.
But I'm also thinking that it can be something about, this is a learning environment, I'm guessing. So it's okay to be a beginner and not have all the answers, which is something that I know that I feel that in my team also helps with that kind of culture, that the rules are set. No one has to be perfect, and no one has to always sort of achieve their goals. It's okay to make mistakes and not know anything, which is also something I think can be part of building that kind of culture.
Yeah.
Anyone else who wants to share? I have we looked at the check-ins. There was one person who wrote that they didn't do much for continuous learning. There was a lot of trial and errors, which sort of brought me back to the conversation that we had, Hazel, as well. I mean, there's a lot of trial and errors in every company, every day, and in every team, and every day. But there's a lot of that knowledge being lost because it's difficult to sort of catch it. It's difficult to become a learning organization. And that knowledge is stuck with one person or two person who was there when something didn't work, who was there when something worked. How, like, do you have thoughts on how to make sure that the trial and errors are not lost? How do you do it?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that we need to start, or I need to start doing more. And I do some, but I don't do as much as we need to, or I need to, which is documenting, right? Having a place where those things are documented so as other people can do it. So making it as easy, and maybe also part of being a leader is becoming redundant, right? Like that should be the goal of a good leader, where others have the power and the tools to be able to take forward, your vision, your mission, and everything that you stand for as leading a project or leading clients. But yeah, I think documenting, and also creating spaces, and I cannot say enough, but like creating spaces to really stop and think and reflect on, what worked and what could have worked better, I think is also key. Yeah. Gala, you were saying Gabriel on the chat.
All right. You had a question as well.
No, it's fine. It was basically what Gala has mentioned before, and was taking what you, Hazel, said about being super patient. I think the maturity of the teams here is different. There are new teams, there are old teams, there are teams that are working very well right now, the teams are suffering a bit. And we have been over 6 weeks where we have a lot of tools, a lot of ideas, exchange with everybody in different situations, and we want to do everything now. and that's maybe a post-program thing to have a bit of reflection on where we stand after this 6 weeks journey, and how to apply that to the team in slow pieces or small steps. But it was a more reflection than a question.
Yeah, well, so I actually want to hold on to that, because I've been part of a lot of our online programs, and there are a couple of programs where the participants, right? This is not something that we set out as Hyper Island, but participants have made a decision to stick together and to support each other in that. So let's say, some people have created WhatsApp groups, some people have used the same Slack and have decided that they meet every 4 weeks, and then they share. So maybe, Gabriel, you're going to share something about that you tried, and then Moritz, can also input on that, and then so this becoming really a community that it goes beyond. It's almost like what this webinar is about, right? Like sustaining that process. So I don't know. I invite you guys to take advantage of this collective, which I think is really, really a luxury.
It would be really lovely to keep the whole Slack group alive and to keep this team together. So let's aim for that. Now we have more in the chat. Just wondering, the material from this course, all the learning kits in the toolbox. Yes. Yes, I will send out more information about that, Karen, as well. But yes, you will have access to all of the learning kits and everything for at least 6 months. Probably a lot longer, but 6 months is what we can promise that we'll keep those platforms that we're using now. So they will be there at least for that. Maybe that's a good note to start wrapping up this webinar as well. So our last webinar, but the course is not over. So I'm not going to put up my sad face or say goodbye or anything like that. I'm going to look forward to reading your reflection journals on Sunday. And next week, I'll send out information about what's going to happen now and how you get your certificates and how to take some of these tools further, of course. It has been great seeing all of your faces each Thursday. But yeah, I'll have to settle for Slack from now on. Okay, so take care, everyone, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.